Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. Enjoy your stay. Where the GA and men are here today. Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. Come and have your say.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Now, when this show originally started some 12 years ago, it was a silly little podcast that myself and Chris produced, huddled over one mic and a small chest of drawers. We broadcast that first night as the 5-1 podcast to 11 people. We didn't really know what we was doing and probably still don't, but we got better, the show got bigger and our audience got bigger, much bigger. In fact, a few weeks ago, we had our highest ever audience of over 17,000 people. I do think a lot of that was down to Nick Morris, so thanks for him for that. But even so, wow. But the unfortunate irony is that as we got bigger, Speedway got smaller. It kept shooting itself in the foot, and we lost audiences and we lost clubs. Tomorrow at Perry Bar, one of those teams returns. For one night only, as Coventry Bees do battle against the Brummies. It should be a good night, so if you truly love the sport of ours, you should make it there and shout from the terraces, only in Speedway. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have with us tonight, we've got Chris working the faders and trying to get different cameras working, having problems. We have... drinking his Don't Panic, sir. We have Matt somewhere, not in the studio. Where are you, Matt?
I'm at home. I've been in Manchester, working in Manchester today, so a bit of a long day. So.
And you survived. Okay. Did you manage to get to see the British final, given that he was up in Manchester?
No, I only went up this morning, unfortunately. So I watched that last night. Pretty good meeting, to be fair, considering the conditions. I was massive doubts as to whether it was going to be on to start with because the track looked very, very wet. But in fairness, the track at Bellevue does hold the rain very, very well. It sort of drains very well. So we saw some very good racing and props. Not a huge surprise. I don't think that Dan Bewley won it, but Adam Ellis looked like he might well add to his previous British title.
Yeah, I mean, there was a few sort of surprise names up there, like Ben Barker, for instance. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. And so, I mean, I have to hold my hand up and say, I forgot it was on. And didn't watch it. Hey-ho. But yeah, so 2 times British champion now.
2 times British champion, yeah, of course, already going to Cardiff anyway. Of course, he'll be defending his title there, but it's Steve Worrell this time who gets the wild card. So that's a real good achievement for him after what's been a really, really good season. Yeah,
absolutely. And of course, the British GP coming up in a couple of weeks, isn't it? Have I got that right?
Yeah, September the 2nd. So I think it's 3 weeks away.
3 weeks away. So looking forward to that, and good to see Ty Woffington starting to get his mojo back. Apparently,
he was better, wasn't he, in Latvia on Saturday? Bit of a controversial exclusion in the final. Although I think we obviously were talking before we went live, and we said that it was probably the fair decision. He did seem quite some way back from the tapes at the start of that final, which was a bit strange, and which didn't help him. And of course, it'll be a big boost for him going into Cardiff. Of course, that's obviously the one Grand Prix that I think Ty's still desperate to get that big result in.
Yeah, and he's put himself back in with a shout of making the top 8 now, of course.
Oh, I think so, yeah. He's right in the...
he's in 9th position.
Right for it at the moment.
So, do you think his return to British Speedway has anything to do with his return to form?
Quite possible. I mean, he's obviously going to be riding a little bit more regularly now. I mean, he's still 18 points. I mean, that's obviously the top 6 that go through automatically, and he's still 18 points behind Dan Bewley, and you've got Robert Lambert and Leon Madsen all both vying for a top 6 spot as well. And Max Frick's just only 4 points further back on 56. So
But,
it's going to be tight in the race for that.
It is, but you can turn around 18 points in one meeting if results go your way, can't you? So
yeah, I think so. I mean, I think probably a lot of people are going to be on 10 ducks, aren't they, going into Cardiff after the problems that they had last year.
Yes.
And really the 2 or 3 occasions before the pandemic. There were big problems with the track.
Absolutely, which is a shame because prior to that, it looked like they'd got it down pat.
I think so, yeah. But I think obviously from what I gather, they've been doing a lot of work on the shale this year, and hopefully this time they can crack it, because we have had good GPs at Cardiff, but the last few have really been disappointing.
Absolutely,
with all the hype around the meeting, it's disappointing that they've just not been able to get the track right. But hopefully this time they can make a bit more of it, because they certainly can't afford another event like last year's.
No. And talking about the track, we should talk a little bit about the track in Riga. They had problems in the Speedway of Nations, apparently, prior to that meeting, and then it cut up very badly, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fairly new track, I think, isn't it? So it's about, it's only about 5 or 6 years old. It's obviously staged big events before, but I was a little bit surprised, although when they picked Latvia for a GP, to be honest. But I think they have, as I say, they have problems with the track all the way through. I think so.
It looked very.
I mean, this season in the GPs is. I mean, I think it probably doesn't help the fact that you've got one rider that's clearly some way away from the others in terms of quality. I mean, again on Saturday, Sparta Smarsnik wasn't quite at his best, but he still delivered when he needed to.
He was at his best in that last race, which is.
Saying that 22 points. I mean, that as you said, with Ty turning around an 18-point deficit, 22 points, you could still turn that around. But it's going to really rely on Smarsnik not turning up or turning up and not having a bad night. But at the moment, you just can't say that happening. He's been averaging quite a few of the Grand Prix, hasn't he? But he's still
absolutely
when he needs to. He's delivered the results.
I don't think he's had one Grand Prix where he's looked at perfectly comfortable. But then you go back to things like there's that year that Jason Doyle was head and shoulders above everybody else, but he didn't win it.
Yeah, because of injury. That's right.
He got injured, so you
never know what's around the corner.
You don't.
I think realistically now, there's only Freddie Lindgren that's likely to be in with a chance of stopping him from doing it at the moment. He's he's on 100 points, and you've got Martin Vashlik down on 85. Jason Doyle on 81. I mean, Jason Doyle's has a good season, but just hasn't been able to pick up the big points in the final.
No. It's it's going to be interesting to see. How many meetings are there left?
3, I think.
So it's not a lot of time to turn quite a big.
No, you're sort of getting into that business end of the season now, haven't you? So
yeah, Cardiff's going to be very important for a lot of riders. Just try and set them up to a run out.
I mean, obviously, I think that's 22 wins for Smarsnik now, so he's only one behind Jason Crump's all-time record of 23. Yeah. So you'd certainly back him to sort of not just beat that, but go on and set a new record himself.
We've got a few people up on the shout box. Not Dave Tynes. I will go through it. Do you want to go through them?
So we got Rich Thomas, Andrew Garner, Dave Twine. Anthony Douglas and a few more that I've missed, sorry.
So Anthony Douglas wants to know if Wolves can't ride at Monmore, will they ride at Perry Bar? It's not something I'd thought about, to be honest.
I would say the chances of that are very, very minimal.
Because?
Are they going to be able to run 2 meetings in a week at Perry Bar? Because that's what he would probably be.
Well, they'd have to run.
I suppose he's going to be depending on the league structure. If they did decide to go around the one big league, there's absolutely no chance.
Absolutely, yeah. If there's one big league, there wouldn't be any chance. But if there's 2 leagues...
And I think the base, as far as I'm aware, the BSBL have also are trying to push anything out where 2 clubs share one track.
I think they're a bit behind the times with that, personally. But track sharing might be the way to go for a lot of clubs.
Yep.
I mean, is there somewhere Peterborough could track share with, for instance?
Who'd be the closest?
I think Wolverhampton, probably. So, yeah.
And Ipswich, oh, no, they can't, can they?
I beg your pardon?
I was just say Ipswich, but they can't, can they?
Why?
A bit far out, isn't
It's
it?
a bit far.
Yeah.
You need a new
Miles away
map.
from any other track in the country, isn't it? So it's a long old slog over there.
You need another map, mate.
Yeah, that's right.
So let's talk a little bit about then what I alluded to in my little monologue at the beginning. Big meeting. Oh, actually, before we do that, we should mention this, shouldn't we? So let's just talk a little bit about the Nigel Pearson League. And I believe there was one match that only one person got right. Is that right?
Was there?
Was that?
I don't remember.
Yes, one something about Berwick 40, Birmingham 50. Only one person predicted Birmingham to win that, as far as I remember.
Who was that then?
I think that might have been me. I think I clutched at straws and said we might get a 4 point.
More hope than expectation, though, didn't you? So,
Peterborough could ride at King's Lynn,
that
says
was
Anthony
up
Douglas.
for Birmingham. That was obviously his second away win of the season.
That's good, okay.
Only we've had more wins away from home than at home.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll come on to the red car match at some point as well. So
Yeah, that's going to. Well, it's given us a hope, I guess, of possibly making those playoffs. After it looked like we wouldn't, but it was a good showing.
only would.
Particularly from our guest, Richard Lawson. We have to say. Okay, so
We're now on 7 points from 11 matches, level with Edinburgh.
Yep.
I mean, that top five are pretty much clear now, aren't they? You've got Oxford 24, Poole 21, Glasgow 18, Redcar 17, and Scunthorpe 14. So really, at the moment, it looks Berwick obviously have fallen away. They've only got 4 points, and Plymouth rock bottom on 2. So at the moment, it looks like it's going to be between Edinburgh and Birmingham for that last spot. And of course, Birmingham, of course, have still got to go to Edinburgh for the restage, haven't they?
Yeah, that's going to be a tough old meeting.
I wonder whether that defeat at home to Edinburgh is going to be what's going to swing it.
Well, I think it's the defeat at home to everybody that's going to swing it, if I'm honest. Rich Thomas says, well done. Where are you in the league?
We'll see you later.
Equal 6.
Put
Oh,
this
where
on.
am I in the league?
No,
Oh, God, no, let's not even talk about that. Am I still on the map?
Yeah, your arse is scraping the bottom.
Yeah, I'm still okay. Well, there you go. I'm very strong in the league. I'm holding everybody else up. That's the way that goes. So let's talk about tomorrow's meeting. Birmingham against Coventry. Hoping that we'll see a good few Coventry fans turn up to support their team. It's such a travesty that Coventry are no longer with us.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, there are lots of positives coming out of Coventry that make you think, maybe things can be turned around and we can have Coventry back.
In what way positives? What do we know?
Well, I mean, the latest that I heard was that there was some sort of appeal because they lost the planning application, didn't they?
Oh, right.
If I remember right, and they've appealed against it, and they've put a lot of bogus bits. I'm being very generic here because I don't know the ins and outs of it. So I think that might be their last chance. Have I got that right?
I think if this appeal is that Brandon Estates have made against the application is overturned, then that would almost certainly be it. There'd be no grounds for Coventry Speedway or for the Coventry Stocks to appeal against the decision.
But by the same token, if it goes,
Brandon, as we know, Brandon, one of the great speedway venues in this country, and it's been absolutely trashed over the last few years. Unfortunately, we've all seen the photographs of it with the repeated fires and break-ins, and it just looks an absolute mess now, which is really, really sad to see when you think that always it used to be one of those stadiums that was always immaculately maintained whenever you used to go there, but it's still standing. It hasn't been built on yet, and while it's still there, there's always a chance that the bees can get themselves back into it. And I believe, I mean, I think I personally, I think at best it's 50-50 as to whether they are going to get back in there. But I still believe if anybody can do it, then they can.
Yeah.
And is that the only place they can go to?
This is a bit of a bone of contention for me, because I do wonder whether maybe they've put too much emphasis on trying to get back into Brandon and put all their eggs in one basket. I know we had Jeff Davis on the show a couple of years ago from Save Coventry Speedway, and he said that one of the things that they went on was that if they built on Brandon, that they would have to buy a new site for the bees and the stocks to use, but obviously they wouldn't do that because of the cost. So I think that's pretty much. They'd have to sort of do a lot of searching around the area to find where it is. I mean, as we know, Brandon, of course, isn't actually in Coventry. It's in Rugby. It's just over the border from Coventry into Rugby. So whether they would have to find somewhere in Rugby or whether they would be able to find somewhere in the Coventry borough, that remains to be seen. But I would imagine that they would have explored those options as well. But it's finding a site. But of course, finding a site's the easy part. It's being able to get permission to
use it. Yeah.
On it. That's the problem.
But you sort of feel the rotter's got to stop somewhere.
It's got to be,
and that would be a good place for it to stop.
Losing Coventry was a massive blow to Speedway, in the same way that losing Wembley was. Losing Wimbledon, that was a huge blow to Speedway when that closed. These are clubs that were illustrious, big name clubs, and you thought there's no way in a million years that we're going to lose those, and here we are without them at the moment. So, but ultimately, I think there's still something for Coventry to cling on, and I think it would be a huge shot in the arm for Speedway if one day we see the bikes running around Brandon again.
Or just bikes running around with Coventry bees on them,
But it's going to be interesting tomorrow. I think, I believe Coventry will bring a lot of that, because there's still a huge amount of support for Coventry. It is a massive Speedway club. There's going to be a lot of fans that are going to make the relatively short trip over. There's a bit of a rivalry, of course, historic rivalry between Coventry and Birmingham, of course. Anyway, and certainly when Birmingham and Coventry were both at that season in the National League together in 2018, I think it was. Coventry always tended to bring a big away following up to Perry Bar.
And got slaughtered. But let's not talk about that.
Well, what you're saying about Coventry, I mean, it's one of those clubs that even like people who don't know about Speedway, they know Coventry bees. That sticker, yeah, I used to see a sticker everywhere. That
bloody thing.
Yeah. That's right. Wherever you went, that sticker, yeah.
Well, it is. I've always said Coventry for me is the biggest club in the Midlands, and that's obviously coming from somebody who supports Wolverhampton. They've got, they were obviously, and it's an illustrious club. It's a club that was always challenging for honours, and it was a club that certainly when Charles Ochiltree was running it, it was always immaculately run and very, very professionally run, and it was just such a shame in the last few years that it ran before it closed in 2016, or was forced to vacate Brandon in 2016. I should say that it sort of got that feeling that it was being run into the ground anyway. There was a lot of work that needed to be done on the stadium, and I would imagine that if we do get Speedway back into there, then there's going to have to be a lot of work done on getting the stadium put right. Certainly the two grandstands must be in serious danger of falling down now because of the lack of use and all the damage that's been done to them over the last sort of 6-7 years. Yeah,
there's all sorts of safety certificates and so on that have to be issued. It's not a small.
I mean, I know somebody who was over there a few weeks ago. And obviously got to the entrance, and of course you've got the big signs and all the mounds of dirt saying, danger, keep out. You've only got to walk 500 yards down the road, and there's an opening in the wall to get through. So it's still not secure. No. Whatever Brandon Estates have said, it's not secure. It's still very easy to get into the stadium. You didn't go in because obviously you're sort of trespassing on you, because it is private property at the end of the day. And I would sort of re-emphasise that on behalf of the Safe Coventry Speedway Group. Please do not go into the stadium, because you're not doing anybody and it helps certainly the residents in the area, because of course anytime they see someone in the site now, they're just assuming that they're going to do damage or fires or things like that.
Why did it close down, Brandon? I'm guessing you're going to tell me it's all down to money. Yeah, was it?
All for housing.
Yeah, the people that brought it off, I can't remember the guy's name. They brought it and they wanted it for housing.
Oh, right, okay.
So it's as simple as that. Same as what's going on at Perry Bar. They want it for housing.
Yeah. But as of yet, no planning permission.
Lots of places for people to live in and nothing for them to do. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of following a similar story to what happened at Cradley. You know, Cradley was obviously sold for Dudley Wood was obviously sold for housing to Barrett Homes. Cradley obviously put in, stood in the way to try and stop that from happening. There was, applications went in from Barrett Homes to build on the site. I think the first 2 or 3 were turned down. In the end, it went to appeal, and the appeal went through successfully, and that was it for Dudley Wood.
I mean, looking at it from the other side.
With all due respect to Dudley Wood, it certainly wasn't a venue that you would put on a pedestal with Brandon, and Brandon is probably in a worse state now than Dudley Wood was, because Dudley Wood was a bit of a wreck on it. Still been staged for Speedway, in fairness, but
there's a hell of a lot of money to be made there. I mean, the amount of housing that could go on that site.
It's a huge
dangling
price.
a carrot that you just who's going to refuse?
But that's why sporting venues and the like need protection. Make no bones about it. If they came for Birmingham City's ground, it's only the fact that Birmingham City have got money, presumably they have money, that would stop it from happening. And that's just it's just not fair. There needs to be protection. There is supposed to be protection.
Yeah.
Right, we've got a few things that we need to catch up on. So Rich Thomas says, sadly, history means nothing to councils and planning. And I think that's true. Graham Oldfield said, best wishes to Nikolai Clint, nasty crash. I don't know about that, so maybe somebody could elucidate, but yeah, absolutely.
Elucidate.
Brian Buck says, even if the planning inspector rules that Rugby Council were correct in refusing Brandon Estates' application, there will be nothing to prevent Brandon Estates submitting a revised application and repeatedly doing this until they were eventually successful, as Barrett's did with Cradley Heath.
Yeah.
I'll just picking up on Rich Thomas's comment there about sadly history meaning nothing to councils and planning. We've seen that in the Black Country RNT recently, haven't we, with the demolition of the Crooked House. I was talking to someone about this, last week at Perry Bar, and they'd said that, talking to people, and the history of the venue and the fact that it's such an iconic venue, and yet they said, well, that doesn't put money. That doesn't. It doesn't pay the bills. It doesn't put money in the coffers, and that's the reason that it was closed down. Ultimately, if it had been used more often, it would still be standing.
Well, I mean, from a Speedway point of view, you've got to say we used our tracks more often. If more people went, if there was more money in Speedway, then maybe a lot of this wouldn't happen. But then again, Cradley was well used. A lot of money in Cradley. Excuse me. Oh dear! I said Cradley. That's what that was.
I've never known anybody sneeze live on.
That dispels that myth that you would never sneeze or cough.
I'm allergic to the word Cradley. That's where it is. Oh dear! Paul, somebody Lavender. I don't know what the PVL stands for. Cradley was a better track than Wolves, Brum, or Coventry. Fight!
Although he's probably right.
Not sure.
A lot of older people that I talk to who, write about Cradley as a track. To be honest, I mean, I didn't start watching Speedway until the 1990s, and I was never. I thought by that stage there was too much banking on it, and there was just one big fast outside line, which, once you got on there, it was impossible to pass. I mean, I probably saw it too late, in fairness.
My memories of it were that it was always pretty slick, but my memories are a long time ago. So I was a young lad then, and everything was red and yellow as far as I was concerned.
It was a shilling, wasn't it?
Yeah. There was that as well.
Shekel.
Brian Reeson says there's a new track record holder at Foxhall last Thursday in front of 3,000 people. Can you guess who it was?
I can.
Go on then.
Was it Ty? No? Come on, tell me, who was it?
Oh, I'm presuming it was Saifutinov.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, that's my guess. Kev Critchley says track sharing, what a joke. Is it a joke if it keeps your club alive?
It's survival, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing you got to.
Survival.
It's not an ideal situation, but it's a needs must, isn't it? So
Yeah.
Pat Moore says it means lots of council tax for the councils.
Yeah.
And in reply to Cradley was better track than Wolves, Brum or Coventry, Julian Lapworth says, but not as good as Leicester.
is that which Leicester is that?
Not the current track,
one,
surely.
Blackbird
I mean,
Road?
I got to say that the current track is getting better.
Yeah. Did you ever go to Blackbird Road, Mark?
No, I never did. Unfortunately.
That was regarded as a very, very good racing track by people I know who went there. So
Clint has suffered a broken neck in 2 places with a C3 fracture. Ouch.
Oh,
yeah,
God.
I was
Crikey.
going to say, best wishes to Nikolai. That was sounded like it was a pretty, big off that he had over the weekend, and that's obviously ended his season, and put more downers on Kings Lynn. So best wishes, Nikolai. Just say as well, obviously, best wishes to a friend of ours, Phil McGlynn. Of course, was
Yes.
taken ill over the weekend, and I gather he's on the mend now back home. So best wishes, Phil. 'Cause I know that
Absolutely.
Phil does watch the show occasionally. So
Absolutely. As Craig Smith said, sorry, just joined in now, so not sure if it's been discussed, but do you think riders who pulled out of this year's British final should be banned from the staging next season? That's an interesting...
Why did they pull out? Because of...
It was
Richie Worrell,
Richie Worrell, wasn't it? He basically said it wasn't fair. The way that the as I understand it, he said the way that the British final is run, it's not fair that it should be over more than one meeting, and also running it at Manchester means that people like Dan Bewley, who's small and hasn't got a lot of weight, has a big advantage because it's such a big track.
I think there would be some mileage in having it in the British Championship as a 2 or 3 rounds around the country.
Why can't they just have it
is a
over a
national
weekend?
championship, So there would be some mileage in that. It's whether you could get the tax in to do it. And we've seen with the British final, as we saw with this British final, 3 or 4 riders dropping out of the meeting, at fairly short notice. And it would be interesting if his brother agrees with him, considering he finished second in
And got the
meeting
wild
last
card,
night.
yeah.
So why couldn't it be run over a weekend? Is that another
Well, where would you run it?
question?
Where would you run it?
Why couldn't you run it at Bellevue?
So, but what part of what he's saying is that the fact that it's run at Bellevue is an unfair advantage. So if you're saying now having 2 meetings or even one at Bellevue, that's it was home track advantage for a start off, and then also his Dan Bewley is very, very light,
Right, okay.
which gives him this power to weight ratio advantage, and horsepower is key around Bellevue because it's a really big track. So speed is key, and he's according to the comments by Mr. Worrell, he's got too big an advantage, and it's not fair. Which is like,
Couldn't he be weighed down with some weights?
well, then you start to talk about handicapping in
Handicaps,
Speedway.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm not sure about that. But what is your thoughts on it, Matt?
Well, on staging it over more than one leg.
Well, on that, but also that it's an unfair advantage because of the weight situation.
I think whatever Bellevue might say, I think there is definitely now a home advantage.
Yes.
A lot of the riders know how to race the track. You've got
But wouldn't that be the case wherever they
You've got to be very, very fit to race on because of the speed of the place. I get that it's the National Speedway Stadium, and it is the newest and most impressive speedway venue in the country that permanently stages speedway. But I think, I think, it would be nice, I think, one day in the future, maybe there could be a 4-legged British final, maybe one leg at Glasgow, maybe one leg at, at Bellevue, or one leg at one of the southern tracks, maybe Poole, one-legged Ipswich or Kingston or something like that. It gives more access because Monday nights. I've always said that. Well, I think we've said on the show many times in the past, haven't we? British Speedway misses its big day out. Okay, it's got Cardiff, but the British final would be an ideal thing to have as a big day out.
Couldn't they do that at Cardiff?
On a Monday night up in Manchester is because it stops a lot of people from over there. And Bellevue to be fair, Bellevue have access to the track pretty much all the time, so they could run it on a Saturday anyway.
Yeah,
so.
I'm guessing it's run on a Monday because of television.
I think the TV is the reason that it's sort of pushed into a Monday night slot, but it's always been a bit of a frustration to me that that meeting is run on a Monday night. And of course, it was run on Monday when it was at Wolves, but of course Wolves is a Monday night track anyway. So
I have to wonder also how much money the riders get for riding it and whether they would be. I think that's a big key for them. I don't think they get paid a lot of money compared to what they get paid at the clubs and so on for riding for that. So I mean, we don't know, do we? But it would be interesting to see.
I think it's a fair point what Craig's just put on. Would any other track have stayed that meeting last night after all the rain we had yesterday? It's wide enough to allow the heavy stuff to build up on the outside and still be a race-able surface. Other tracks wouldn't be wide enough and would be too dangerous to ride. I think that is a fair point. Bellevue is one of the tracks in the country that's very, very good for being able to take a lot of rain.
The year that Danny King won it was a similar scenario, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. He was a disappointment to me because he went into that meeting in pretty good form, but he never really got going, did he, Dan?
No. More comments coming up. Jez Coulson being by Brandon last month, and there were new fencing up, but lots of damage to the grandstand. Rich Thomas, and this is a very downbeat show tonight, I'm sorry about this. Martin Dugard stated last week on a live interview, no chance of Speedway ever at Eastbourne, and Poole are also on borrowed time. And
been
Paul
about Poole for a while, haven't they? So,
yeah. Brandon Estates will keep applying till they get their way. Cradley Slick, that's Coventry you're on about. Coventry was always slick back in the 70s, but last few times that I went to it wasn't that slick.
I think when Coventry was reshaped at the end of the 90s, I thought it produced some really good racing. People always had a downer on, no, it's Brandon, it's just follow the leader. But I certainly in the last 10, 15 years that it was staging Speedway, I saw some very good meetings at Brandon.
Yeah, I saw a few good meetings where Birmingham won, but it's...
Of course,
those are always the meetings that are the best, whatever the state of the track are the ones that you win.
Yeah.
Brian Buck, football has the financial clout to resist the greed of the property developers, so it is the smaller sports that continue to be the target. So there is an urgent need for the government to bring in some laws to safeguard sports venues, which seem to be fast disappearing. Absolutely.
It needs to be done pretty quickly.
Yeah.
For
and I think
because we're losing tracks now at a rate of knots.
A lot of these smaller sports should get together and form one big lobbying group to try and bring that about. Fred Graham, also big shout out to get fit soon to Peter Hill, the photographer that was hurt at Armadale a couple of weeks ago. Absolutely, that was a weird...
Real lucky escape for him, wasn't he? But he's sort of come out of it comparatively unscathed to how it could have been. But I think there's going to be I think there might well be more coming out about that one. I would imagine certainly health and safety are going to be showing a big interest in that, because for a bike to sort of go over the fence and hit somebody in the crowd or somebody on the perimeter of the track is
not great. Craig Smee says, Ben Barker said he was overweight on Eurosport last night, I believe, and he finished third. So I don't think Worrell's comments are totally correct. I think possibly the weather might have had something to do with that. And Barry,
he does tend to ride the wet tracks well, doesn't he, Ben Barker?
Yeah.
But he has done well in the British final in the past. I think he has been in the final before.
Yeah, he's come close to winning it a couple of times. Yeah. Barry Young, Kingsley and Leicester Bellevue could do it at weekends. British final, I presume.
Yeah.
We've done that one. There we go.
Peter Hill says, I'm not interested in a British final series, but I think we need fair qualifiers.
Well, years ago, you used to have quarterfinals, didn't you, and things like that. But unfortunately, we're in a position now where there's not enough British riders to have unless you sort of extend it to what they used to have in the 60s and 70s, and extend it to Australians and New Zealanders as well.
I mean, you'd be putting in National League riders, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's the problem. You sort of, you don't really want to be. You don't want to be making a meeting where there's too many riders.
Who's going to turn up to watch that? Who's going to turn up to watch that? Not many people. And Brian Buck's talking about the Kings Lynn, Leicester and Bellevue that could do it at weekends. That's a fair comment, but the probability is that many of the riders couldn't do weekends because they're going to be in Poland and so on. So, yeah. Jez says, is Matt going on Thursday?
Not to Leicester, no. I'm not. Well, not playing to at the moment. So.
Wolves are at Leicester, are they?
Yes.
That's going to be an interesting match, I think.
It is, yeah. Could do with getting some wins on the board away from home, really, at the moment. Rich Thomas says, British finals at Brandon on a Sunday were always worth a trip. You had some huge crowds at Brandon, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge delays in getting out of the car park afterwards as well, from what I remember. So.
What sort of crowds did they get, Brandon?
Football-sized crowds.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, the place was absolutely packed. Funny
story.
story.
Saying the fact that the aerial shot of the stadium taken for Nigel Burcock's testimonial in '76, it was, that was literally like a football crowd. It was enormous.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember the one year that Andy Graham won it, which I believe was 82, was it? I think. 82, yeah. And I was in the crowd, and I was over the moon, as you can imagine. So much so that I dropped my wallet. And in my wallet was about £300, which is a lot of money in those days, because you had to buy things for cash in those days. Yeah. And I was buying something the next morning for my car, which was going to cost £300, and so I'd got it on me. Not for long, the wallet disappeared, along with my driving licence. A true story, because 10 years later, my wallet appears with my driving licence in.
Really?
No, £300 sent through my letterbox with my driving, and I've got 3 endorsements on my driving licence. So yeah, those were different days.
Yeah, no, I mean that's obviously a day that you'll remember fondly, obviously, for Andy Graham becoming British champion, and of course his brother was second, wasn't he? So
that's right, yeah.
Well, he wasn't obviously with Birmingham at the time, so he was still held with a lot of affection at.
Absolutely, riding for Cradley, so the order was the right way around, of course. Richard Thomas says, first time that wallet has seen the light, the Queen was blinking on the notes. Bless you. Yeah. Craig Smith, I've seen my first British GP at Brandon when Dugard was wild card and won it. Huge crowd and great racing too. The British final always did see good racing.
Was a really good meeting.
So yeah, we've caught up with everybody.
So when were the last big crowds? What decade we're talking about? The big crowds.
Well, that was 82 when I last went to a British final. But I mean, I've been down to Wolverhampton. I say that, but I've seen a couple of finals at Wolverhampton in Ty Woffington's time, and they was really pretty good big crowds as well. I wouldn't say they were the size of what we had at Brandon, but they were it took a long time to get out of the car park, and someone and cars were parked everywhere. So yeah, I'm sure Matt will back me up on that.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I mean, the only problem I found with them in the British final at Monmouth was it was taking forever to get through the meeting. I mean, sometimes when he was finishing at about 11:30, and I love my Spurdo, but I don't want to be watching it at that time. So
yeah, because there was, it meant a lot to the riders, and
everybody was going for it.
Yeah, first corner was, Rich Thomas says always big crowds during the 80s.
Yeah,
but do you know what? Even in the 80s,
the year when we began to sort of dip with the crowds, wasn't it? The early 80s.
It's even then people were complaining that there weren't getting enough people.
Was it 96,000 at the last Wembley World Final in 81? Really?
Something like that. Yeah, I was there as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's a big crowd, isn't it?
It was, yeah. So, you know, the crowd has been there. And when you look at us on our little podcast getting 17,000 people listening, where are they?
Hands off that, wouldn't they? So.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, even normal. I mean, tonight we'll get like 4,000. It's a nice crowd for us.
So I did start talking about Birmingham versus Coventry tomorrow. I think we should, I mean, first of all, encourage people to come and watch it. You don't know when you're never going to get a chance to see Coventry again. The teams are Birmingham's normal 1-7 with Guest at the beginning, number 1 for Josh Pickering. Nick Morris must be coming up soon to his hearing, I imagine. I think it might be.
It was delayed, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, I believe.
Yeah,
last
I'll
time.
have to find out what the date is for that. No, can't be too far away now. The Coventry select, Chris Harris, that's a good choice. Jack Smith. People might say, well, he's never ridden for Coventry, but his dad did, of course.
His dad won the British Championship 3 times while he was racing for Coventry. So.
Yeah. Carl Howarth.
Yeah.
Connor Mountain, who I believe comes from round, and I think he rode for Coventry.
Yeah, he rode for them in that season they had in the National League, and he was number 1. So.
Ben Barker, Max Perry, and Freddie Hodder.
Yeah, Freddie Hodder, whose grandfather, I think, rode for Coventry back in the 50s. So there's a link there. I mean, I unfortunately I didn't come to the Coventry Challenge meeting last season. By all accounts, it was a very good meeting.
It was a good
big
meeting,
crowd as well. So Coventry brought a lot over. I think they will. This time as well. It's obviously, getting to, as we said earlier in the show, it's getting to a quite a critical stage now in the battle to try and get Speedway back to Coventry.
And that's important for them to show that it's a sport that's
the most important thing about that meeting is not whether Birmingham win or whether Coventry win, although both sets of fans are going to want their teams to win. It's showing that there's still a demand for Speedway in Coventry. And of course in Birmingham as well. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've got a fight on our hand. It's interesting to see the piece in the Mail this week about the chap that went and visited, and it was a really good, positive piece, I thought. Did you see that?
Oh.
Did you see that, Matt? Yeah. I'm saying that. I'm guessing.
I did say it,
yeah. You're reading, are you? Yeah. Rich Thomas.
Through some of the comments that are coming up on
the
chat, so.
This is a depressing one. I've only seen 3 live meetings since 2005. Poole, Ryehouse and Swindon. Wouldn't think of going now. It's lost its draw for me. Is that possibly? Have you got? See, I think one of the problems with Speedway is that it is a team sport, and if your team goes, it hasn't got the same sort of excitement for you, the same emotional content.
My dad felt that in the 21 years that Birmingham didn't run. I mean, he went to Wolverhampton every week, but I mean, like he said himself, he wasn't really overly concerned whether Wolves won or lost. It was just to sort of keep in touch with Speedway. I think the late Joe Thurley as well. Once he sort of dipped away from Speedway, he would maybe go once or twice a year to see how everything was going until he came back to be involved at Birmingham when it opened in 2007. So
yeah. Brian Buck says, in theory, we would all like to see one league next season, but I wonder if people realise that to achieve this would require a points limit of something like 28. So how would Matt feel if the Wolves' current number 7 became the number 1 in 2024, with the other 6 team men all being of National League standard?
Well, to be honest, if that meant Wolves were running in 2024, I'd probably take it at the moment.
Well,
being on that side of it, but I think there's a lot of things that have been caught. I mean, the big thing obviously is the doubling up rule. It's created a rider shortage, which is going to have to be sort of sorted out by somebody with a lot more intelligence than us at some point in the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to happen, hasn't it? I can't see it the way that the sport is shrinking. I can't see it surviving any other way. Eventually it's got to happen, and I know that people are talking about it happening next year. I know some of the promoters are talking. I can't tell you where I got that information from, but I know some of the promoters are. That's on the radar. Let's put it that way. Rich Thomas did between 80 to 100 meetings a season between 85 and 91. But what team was you supporting, Rich? Or was that not a thing for you? Craig Smee says it would kill the sport off talking about the limit of 28. Why would we need a limit of 28? And Brian Buck would answers how else could the teams be balanced? I'd love to know how you got that figure of 28. However, I guess if you take all the riders that are currently average and just
estimate, really, isn't it?
yeah,
So.
yeah, but it's interesting. I mean, a far bigger problem is all the doubling up. I think that was the beginning of the end for a lot of Speedway. And I remember Brian Buck, saying that at the time that it was happening. This is going to kill Speedway. He might well be right. He might well be right.
It was. Well, I mean, I've said many times when it was first introduced, it was primarily only intended for British riders under the age of 21, with one team having one each, which I thought was a good way of doing it, and you'd be only able to double it for a couple of years, and then one team bought one other one in, and then another one did, and another one didn't. It's now just got into a situation where it is totally out of control. You know,
Absolutely.
I think you barely see a team now where there's no doubling up riders. I think virtually every rider in the league is doubling up now. It's just been allowed to get out of control, unfortunately, and it's going to take a lot of work to sort of get that back under control. You won't be able to get rid of it in one go. If you were going to get rid of it, you would have to do it gradually. But I think, unfortunately, from the rider's perspective, and I could understand this, they're not going to be happy about losing potential earnings from having less meetings, which is a fair point from their side of it. So,
right. Well, there's quite a conversation going on between Craig Smee and Brian Buck and Dave Twine to do with how the ins and outs of that, and what Craig Smee wants to know why can't you just set it at 45? Well, you wouldn't set it at 45; you'd set it at 42.5. But that's a break even. That would produce a 45 draw.
Could be a fight.
But the riders are not there. It's as simple as that. However, I think it's time to go to our league. Is it not our predictions league?
Yeah.
yeah.
Ooh, where's Mike? Oh, he's right down.
By the way, we have got a
bottom
match obviously
there.
taking place tonight at
yes.
Plymouth. They've finally got a home match. And at the moment, it is Plymouth 32, Redcar 34. So a lot closer than maybe a lot of people would have thought in that one.
I don't know how that affects us, which would be best for us. Because Plymouth are right at the bottom, pretty much out of it, aren't they?
Yeah, I don't think Birmingham can catch Redcar. I think Redcar are pretty much there, and they're in the top six already. So,
in which case, the best thing would be for us, for Redcar to win.
Okay, so
Sorry to be Brummy-centric there.
Prediction League. At the top, we've got Rich Thomas, Simon Corbett, Andrew Garner.
That's close, isn't it?
Yes, Gordon Gambrell, John Bird, Nick Matthews, Kev Lilly, Duncan Pemberton, Elliot Hunt, and at number 10, we've got Steve Morgan. So it's look at that. There's only a point in it at the top two. There's only 2 points in the top three.
I wasn't the only one to predict a win for Birmingham, as it turns out. There was 3 others. Damn.
Okay. So where are you?
All one's fairly low.
You're right down the bottom. I'm still 20 odd points. Yeah, I'll do.
Okay, well let's do this thing.
Over to you, Matt.
okay. The first one in the NDL tomorrow night is Oxford against Worthington.
I'm just looking at my notes here to see if I can find out whose turn it is. It's your turn, Chris. Oxford against who, sorry?
Worthington. In the NDL.
Okay. I'll go Oxford by 10.
Oxford by 8.
I went far off.
By 14, I'll go for.
Okie dokie.
Okay. Next up, tomorrow night in the Championship, Poole against Redcar.
That's up to Mike.
Poole versus Redcar. I'm going to say Poole by 12.
I'm going to say Poole by 8.
I'll go Poole by 2.
Okay. Okay, next up, we don't normally do challenges, but we will on this case. It's Birmingham against Coventry.
Are we going to count this as part of it then?
Yeah, we will do, yeah.
Okay. I'm going to say Birmingham by 10.
Okay. I'll say Birmingham by 6.
Actually, we should start again. Short out. Your go, Matt.
Yeah. Birmingham by 6.
I'll go Birmingham by 8.
I'll go Birmingham by 10. I think that is the first time for pretty much all the season that all three of us have agreed a Birmingham win.
They got to win now.
Okay. Next up on Thursday in the Premiership, another Midlands derby, Leicester against Wolves.
And that's up to you.
Me, isn't it?
Yeah. Webber. You're up to you, Webby.
Yeah. Who was it? Wolves.
Leicester versus
Oh,
Wolverhampton.
yeah. I'm going to go for Wolves win. Wolves by 4. There we go. Committing.
Well, I would take your arm off for that. I'm going to
Yeah.
say
Yeah,
Leicester
no.
by 8.
You don't know.
I'll say Leicester by 4.
It's a funny old game. But not that funny.
Okay, and the next one?
Next one is Kings Lynn against Ipswich.
That's up to you, Matt.
Ipswich by 12.
I'm sorry, it's not up to you. It was up to me. It was up to me.
You're on the shop.
You know what?
Ipswich by 12 as well.
I've just looked over to where Matt was sitting before.
Yeah.
And he's not
He's not there.
there now. Strange, isn't it?
And you said by 12, so it's up to you now.
Who? Ipswich by 8.
Okay. Okay, next one.
Next one is Sheffield against Peterborough.
Dun, 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 and that's up to you, Matt.
Sheffield by 16.
Sheffield by 10.
Sheffield by 18.
Okay. Okay, next up, Glasgow against Berwick.
Glasgow by 12.
Yeah, I mean, Berwick's... Their head's got to be down after that beating that we gave them. So I'm going to say Glasgow by 12.
Glasgow by 14 also.
Okie dokie.
Next up is Edinburgh against Oxford.
It's Mike.
Oxford by 4.
I'll say the same. Oxford by 4.
I'll go Oxford by 10.
Okay. While that's going on at Redcar, it's Redcar against Birmingham.
This is a night to remember, isn't it? It's up to you, Matt.
Redcar by 10 also.
Redcar by 12.
Just because we need it, I'm going to say Birmingham by 2.
Okay. Then on to Saturday.
You all laughed when I said that about. You all laughed when I said that about Berwick.
We laugh at you anyway.
Well, that's true.
Berwick against Glasgow is the next one.
It's up to me, I think, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Glasgow by 4.
I'm going to say a draw.
I'll say Glasgow by 10. Okay. Then in the NDL, you've got Kent against Mildenhall.
Yeah. Kent by 4.
Mildenhall by 6, I'll say.
I'll go Mildenhall by 4.
Okay.
Of course, it is the first of a double header at Kent, so that will be followed by Kent against Oxford.
Okay, and that's up to you, Matt.
Kent by 4.
I'll go Oxford by 2.
Do you know what? I'm going to say Oxford by 2 as well.
Okay. Also on Sunday, we've got Hull against Edinburgh.
And that's up to you, Chris.
Edinburgh by... Trust me.
Okay.
Trust me.
My smack has never been more gobbed. Pool by 20.
Yeah, I was going to go the same. Hull by 20.
I probably got that one wrong. Then.
I think there's a good chance.
Okay, next up, on Monday, we've got Bellevue against Kings Lynn.
That's down to me, isn't it? I'm going to say Bellevue by 20.
I'll say Bellevue by 24.
I'll say Bellevue by 16.
I thought you were going to say Kings Lynn by 2 then.
Think I'm stupid?
Well,
Next up is Wolves against Ipswich.
now that is the big one.
Yeah.
And that's up to you, Matt. Of course it is.
I'm going to sit on the fence and say a draw. I'll go for a third successive Super 8. I'll
Wow.
probably take that at the moment, given how we've done the last few, haven't we, since?
I'll go Wolves
That's
by
really, really
4.
tough racing, that
I'm
is.
not going to stay that. I'm not going to. Wolves by 4.
You do know if he gets to the super heat, you're going to lose it. Just saying. I'm going to say a draw as well.
Okay. Peterborough against Sheffield is next.
It's up to me.
It is, yeah.
Peterborough by 6.
Sheffield by 4.
It's my go next.
Yeah.
Sheffield by 6.
Yeah. Okay, and the last one in the Championship is Plymouth against Glasgow.
That's up to Mike.
Glasgow by 8.
Glasgow by 10.
I was going to go 10 as well. I'll go Glasgow by 12.
Excellent.
And we're done.
We are done.
Great
Yep.
timing.
Still 32-34 at Plymouth. They just had a rerun in Heat 12. Ben Barker has come down on Ben 1 doing a complete 360, walking back to the bids, holding his arm. Barker excluded.
That's not good for Plymouth.
No.
Okie dokie. Well, it's been an interesting night. It's been a bit of a sad sort of night, isn't it? All I will say to people is just get out and watch the Speedway while you can. If you can get down to Perry Bar tomorrow, it should be an interesting and entertaining meeting, and the result's not the important thing, is it? It's to show support for your sport. That's what I'm trying to say. Dear me. Right, I'm going. I'll see you all next week. I'm going to go and get myself some new teeth. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Welcome to the Speedway Tavern. What's the news?